Part C, specialized cells labeled X on the diagram. So here's the diagram and there they are. So those cells there. We don't really need that diagram for much else now. They're located in the epithelium and maintain the iron composition of the blood plasma. Explain why this is necessary in the flounder. So, we've got these cells. They maintain the iron composition. How can anything maintain an iron composition? Well, it must do something, pumping ions. That's the only thing a cell can do with its membranes. It can only pump ions. So that's going to be the answer somehow. And we need to talk about the flounder. So now we're talking about the flounder. Lives in the seawater, very salty seawater habitat, and we know that these ions can go through this membrane into the fish. So the problem that the flounder's got is that ions are going to be moving in by facilitated diffusion into its body, and so these cells will pump the ions back out again. So we just need to put that into words. So the percentage iron composition of the habitat is greater than the flounder. Ions will move in to the flounder fish, and because it's already told us this, and in the start of the question, we knew this by facilitated diffusion. And so it needs to get rid of them. So cells X pump ions back out into the surrounding water. So quite tricky that question. Salmon spend the majority of their lives in seawater, so a bit like the flounder. But they must go into fresh water to reproduce. And you might have seen them leaping around in the air. During these migrations, the specialized cells undergo structural changes. And here's the salmon cells in different habitats. And one's freshwater, one's seawater. Right, this question has led us, we've just talked about if we're in seawater, we need to do lots of pumping of ions. Look at these diagrams, what do we see? This diagram on the left has got a very kind of convoluted membrane. So it's got a large surface area of membrane, so we notice that. It's also got lots of these things, so lots of mitochondria. So that's the nucleus looks the same and general shape seems the same. So those are two things, and we need to go right. Large surface area, well, more transport by whatever means. Lots of mitochondria, more ATP energy. And now we're going transport, that needs ATP. Well, energy, yes, that's going to be active transport. And we've talked about active transport with the flounder fish in seawater. So cell 1 is the salmon in seawater. So cell 1 is the seawater salmon. And then one of our two suggestions here, so I'll put them both down, but we only need one. We can get 1 mark for cell 1 and then 1 mark for, e.g., lots of mitochondria to provide ATP, energy for active transport. And the other point would be lots of surface area. They're highly folded, so highly folded, so lots of surface area for transport. I'd have been tempted, even if I didn't understand this question, you might have been able to scrounge a mark by going, well, lots of mitochondria for active transport. That is nearly always the case. If you see lots of mitochondria, they're doing something like that. And then a strange little last question, 4 marks. Oh dear me. Acidification, so too much acid, has been linked to the death of fish such as carp. And scientists concluded, I don't know which ones, I've never seen the study, the cause of death is an inability to maintain blood plasma ion concentrations. Use the information to explain how they arrived at this conclusion. Right. So you got to think about acids. What are acids going to do? They're going to denature proteins. So acids, that's the first thing I think about, is they're going to denature proteins. So acids denature proteins. Which proteins are we thinking about? Well, in our diagram to start with, so you can always go back to start the question, we've got various proteins here, including possibly carrier proteins that pump ions out, or we've got channel proteins that ions can go through by facilitated diffusion. So acids, for example, channel proteins or protein pumps, for active transport. And they might, when we've done the enzymes topic, you'll know that acids also denature enzymes. So we get less, so possibly less active transport, or we might get less facilitated diffusion, or less facilitated diffusion. And so actually in freshwater lakes, what are the ions doing? So in freshwater, ions might move out of the fish possibly. So the ions inside the fish are higher than the surrounding water, so ions might move out. So if these are damaged and create gaps possibly, so ions might move out more possibly, even though there's a facilitated diffusion going on. But certainly it's going to be related to this information here, so ions are going to be higher in the fish, so ions higher in the fish than the habitat. So it's a strange question. 4 marks is really, really tough. But if you are stuck, you've just got to kind of give the information that you've got, try and come up with, well, acidification, what could that possibly do, and give some kind of sensible suggestions. I don't think some of the suggestions in the mark scheme are very sensible for this, so you'd be, I think it's pretty tough. So 17 marks in total.